Happy Thursday morning. Welcome to Coffee Rants with Dan. I am your host, the spiritual anarchist, Dan Arnold. This is the number one supported listening radio station in the world. So please help support the efforts of this by visiting the station's donation page, donation section of the website, and you have a little bit of extra, please give it. Well, I have so much to talk about today. Where do I even begin? Pretty soon, this is going to have to definitely end up going to a 2 hour radio show. I'm glad I have the slot to be able to do that, especially when I start interviewing people. I got my coffee here. I just topped it off. To my friend Logan Hart and his hydrogen therapy, he forgot to drink his coffee because of the hydrogen therapy. So when I get that, if it ends up being that good, maybe I'll change the name of the show to Hydrogen Therapy Rant with Dan. But as of now, I still have to have my coffee. I want to give a special shout out to my friends listening at Lovolution, Amy, John, Paul, Sebastian, and Little Angus, the newest edition. I'm keeping my promise, Sebastian, and I'm going to try to help get people's heads out of their rear ends for you. Or I'm allowed to say it. I'm going to try to get people to pull their heads out of their asses. So, I'm going to finish reading a little bit that I have left on what I was reading last week on shame. I'm getting kind of happy with my readings because I almost had it done. It was almost all the way done. And then after I do that, I'm going to actually start dealing with what's going on in the plane of effects and give information based on my training that I think could be of help to others by reading from my book, Violence and Ego, and talking about predators, talking about self-defense, because we're going to be in a situation in this world where we're going to have to be able to defend ourselves. But there's quite a few things I'm going to talk about before then, just right off the top of my head, right off the cuff. The Pope Francis, came out recently and stated that all religions have equal value and they all lead to God. Now, I am not religious. I was raised Catholic, but I am not a practicing Catholic, nor am I a Christian. I'm what I've heard called an esoteric Christian, which means I understand and agree with the teachings that I've read and the teachings of Yahshua. I don't even like to call him Jesus, like some people do, because Jesus just means Hail Zeus. So Yahshua, aka Jesus, his teachings I agree with. And in a lot of the teachings you find, where you find the overlapping goodness, I have to, really make sure I say this, where you find the overlapping goodness in different religious beliefs. It's in those overlaps that you will find the truth, or much closer to the truth of our creation. So I'm definitely not a religious morning coffee rant show. But when somebody like the Pope says that, the Vatican has a rich history in satanic symbolism and a bunch of other things. But there's still some truth in that. There's some truth. What he said has a lot of truth to it. And bear in mind, part of misinformation, disinformation, propaganda is when you're being manipulated. And I've talked about that over the last several weeks, and I'm going to raise the vibration from that point. We all know that that's happening. There's some truth to saying that all roads lead to the Creator. Okay, I've heard the Creator. I've heard it. Age Nost, a book called Spiritual Science that I highly recommend reading, refers to God as the Father in the Sea of Lights. Sea of Lights is a pretty good, a pretty good description. Both times that I died and nearly died, light was involved. So if we were created in God's image with a capital G, God is pure light and consciousness. Okay. All roads lead to God. Jesus took doubting Thomas. Now remember, he wasn't really doubting Thomas, into a cave and told him not to kiss his ass in so many words. He told him, you're just like me. You have taken the words from my mouth. You have drinking these words. You're like me. You're not like them. When you teach others to find you. They don't quit searching till you find. And upon finding, you will be disturbed. Upon being disturbed, you will be astonished, and then you will be a master of the universe. And then when Thomas, and this is from a Gnostic text, the Lost Book of Thomas, when Thomas came out, the other disciples asked him, what did he say to you? And Thomas replied, I can't, if I told you, you would stone me to death. So even then, Jesus, or Yahshua, was keeping the truth. He was trying to teach natural law. He was trying to teach that we've got the divine spark in all of us, that we all are a fragmentation of creation, of that creative spark, of God. When we die, we return to that, and we're here to remember who we are. So that way we can become what we're supposed to be, which is a service to humanity and a service to others. And someday we get to return to that. And when we return to that light, we become all-knowing, we become aware. And the only way that can happen is if we become back to being a part of God. And hell is actually separation from source. There is no lake of fire. So when a Pope comes out and says something like that, I just want to say there is some truth to it. It's worth listening to. It might be too late to say that because people gleefully murder one another over their version of what they think God is. And God's not this bearded guy in the desert sky. So I thought that was a little bit interesting, and it was something definitely worth sharing. Something else that oh, by the way, next time you sneeze, okay? Next time you sneeze, remember to say, I bless myself, okay? By the way, today is Halloween. Today is October 31st, 2024, in the year of not my Lord, 2024. I did sneeze this morning. It's cold season here in Cleveland, and I did bless myself. So remember, we are all one. We are all points of consciousness and a part of God. And when we hurt one another, we are hurting ourselves. And this is why we find ourselves back in this circle of dysfunction that humanity has had to face, or the intelligent inhabitants of this planet, because we've been destroyed many times. We have entered into the sixth age. It seems like we're running around in circles with the destruction that seems to occur all the time, because there's beings out there, there's things out there that do not want us to advance beyond where we're at now and where we've been in the past. This brings me to transhumanism and to the people who hope Elon Musk is some kind of savior. Okay, I'm going to go into conspiracy theory or conspiracy analysis rant right now. The dude owns SpaceX. He's a front man for it. He's a shill. Okay, I would use other language if it was my podcast, but I'm not going to. This guy wants to put chips in your brain because it can help if you've got Alzheimer's, or it can help if you're paralyzed. 5G towers up all over the world, 6G being built, 7G in the chamber. Low-hanging satellites all over the planet that can send signals to these towers. And he wants to put chips in our brains. Do the math. Just connect some dots. Okay. I'm a former United States Marine, and I've got my crayons out and I'm connecting the dots. So while all our highly, intelligent intelligence officers and people who are more educated, higher up on the food chain than I am, in the know of certain things, aren't actually speaking up, speaks volumes to me that all this is being controlled by something that's not human, which is, I don't understand why people are not just speaking more plainly. This is not human driven. Okay. Humans are the ones who have to perpetrate these things because these beings don't want to incur the negative consequential effects of natural law or karmic law. So they have us do it to one another. That's good things or bad things. And this is why I suspect there's been prophets throughout human history who are being guided by, I just say, beings that are better beings, not supernatural beings, blood and flesh creatures that can materialize into this 3D reality. They're blood and flesh and blood creatures, beings of higher consciousness. And there's one that's meaning our downfall. They're one that, see, part of this whole thing is they're trying to steal the power of God with a capital G by not allowing our consciousness to return to the light. Thereby, we weaken God when that happens. Technology has betrayed us, but that doesn't have to be the case. See, technology helps us greatly. It aids us. It's a tool. And it's a tool right now that we are allowing to be used as a weapon against us, and it's betraying us in that regard. They have the technology, use the technology to repair our T cells. Our T cells regenerate. That creates renewed health for us up until the age of 25. After 25, the T cells no longer regenerate, and thus starts the aging process. There was a time in our history, in our slave history, because we were made to be a slave species. This is something some people aren't going to be able to handle. It doesn't matter. This is the truth. There is a force of involution, a force that wants us to devolve, a force that wants to feed off of our negative loose energy, a force that does not want to see our souls, our consciousness return to the all, return to God with a capital G, or the Father in the Sea of Lights. And since you can't attach gender to divinity, we can call that the Mother in the Sea of Lights. However, this is a creative force that created everything, and that creative force usually has a masculine element. So saying the Father in the Sea of Lights is probably not a bad thing to say. That's that creativity, that creation. Just like Mother Earth, terra firma, where we live on planet Earth, Mother Earth, that's the nurturing, love and nurturing of creation. That's why we call this Mother Earth. So even in creation, there is a masculine and feminine principle. And these are found in Hermetic principles, and they are written into the fabric of our reality, in this 3D reality, and then they're written into the natural laws of the universe that govern this universe. God already put them there for us. And this may sound out there, but if you believe in that invisible guy in the sky with a beard, that's the one who made everything, and you've never seen him or her, you should be willing to at least consider other beliefs based off of real research, off of real tablets that were found in Sumeria, the Sumerian tablets. One of these days, I'll name off everything that you can look into. But we're running up against the time clock here. Agenda 2030 is right around the corner. Agenda 45, or I'm sorry, Agenda 45. We're running into a 20-year period where they want to completely enslave humanity, where we won't own anything, and they're doing a perfect job of it. Okay? Today is Halloween. I just got to tell you, if you're voting, you're getting the trick, not the treat. I'll repeat that. You're getting the trick. So don't say trick or treat today. If you're voting, just go say trick, because you've been tricked, you've been fooled, you've been bamboozled. We're not voting our way out of this. We already are in a worldwide covert state of slavery. All the nations of the world, all the puppeticians at the highest levels of the world worked together 4 years ago in tandem to lock the world down for a reason. And now 4 years later, we're on the brink of world war. Okay? And it's not the citizens, it's the governments. I did a short that I put on my YouTube station last night. I can't play it now because my last two words, my very last, second from last word is something that can't be put on the radio. But in essence, I was saying basically, it's not the citizens of the world killing each other and going to war. It's World War III amongst the governments. Okay? I get it, guys. You're going to war for our protection. We need governments because governments protect us. What do they protect us from? From other governments. So we definitely need governments. Don't people need to be governed? Yes, of course. You can't trust people. I don't trust people at all. Who's going to govern us? Well, people. Does that make any sense? So I'd ask the governments of the world, can you guys just go away? We don't want to murder one another for you. Yeah, I live in a building that's a very large building with a lot of different people in here. We all get along from all over the world. Regular people just want to live their lives. The good news is we got them outnumbered. We need to just have peaceful non-compliance. We need to also speak to the order followers and try to appeal to their humanity, because they've got love in their life. They've got things that they love. We have to appeal to their humanity and get them to not follow immoral orders. We got to get them to understand that shooting somebody is wrong, hurting somebody is wrong, kidnapping somebody is wrong. Enforcing any law that's made by another human being is wrong. Enforce God's laws. Do not bring harm or murder others. Don't assault others. Don't steal from others. Those are God's laws. Those are the laws written into creation. Unfortunately, throughout human history, we've always had mercenaries willing to drop the hammer, swing the sword, swing the axe. And that could be part of the reason why we're in this problem we're in. And I'm not going to get on here and be a doomsayer constantly, you know. As an ex-cop, I've got this really bad habit of always going to a worst case scenario on everything. I do my own shadow work, and it is something, it's a garden that needs to be weeded from time to time. This takes introspection, self-reflection. I don't want to overdo it. I don't want to be stuck in this trauma drama loop. People get themselves stuck in this trauma drama loop. But, you know, going to worst case scenario, then anything that happens less than that's a bonus. And that is something that a lot of people do. It's called catastrophizing. The worst rarely happens. Okay. Confidence is usually quiet, where arrogance and, you know, anxiety are very loud. So I don't want to be a doomsayer, but I also can't get on here and, you know, have what I consider to be toxic positivity. We've got people that are really concentrating on different solutions, and I'll never knock anyone who's trying to tell the truth, who's trying to help in some way, or trying to find solutions to these problems, because the solution is actually simple. It's not as complex as people make it out to be. The simple truth is if people could understand objective morality under natural law, to understand that morals are objective, what you're allowed to do has already been written into creation, and that's an action that you do that doesn't initiate harm to another being, or an inaction that allows the harm to another sentient being. At this point, I consider to be just as bad, because you're consenting to it. So to me, voting, when you go out and vote, you're consenting for violence to be done to the people you disagree with. You're just not willing to do it yourself. So in my, you know, opinion, you're a coward. You're giving away your power to another person by doing that. Understand the game for what it is. So, like, I don't think technology is this really bad thing. I think it's improved our lives. It's helped our lives. It's enriched our lives. In fact, at one point in time, I would have said, I'm so grateful for Facebook and for that technology. I got to meet friends I would have never seen again in my life thanks to it. So there's a plus to that technology. But like any other non-sentient being, including artificial intelligence that's programmed by humans, it can be used to aid humanity, or it can be used to hurt humanity. Why not use the technology to be able to repair T cells after the age of 25 and slow down the aging process? See, when we were first created thousands and thousands of years ago, we did live into, you know, the hundreds, 500, 600, 700, 800, 900 years old. That's not just some allegory, but we started becoming too much like our makers. We started getting too smart, too wise, too intelligent. They didn't like that. So they shortened our lives. Guess how they did that? They did it through needlecraft. They did it through jabs. They did it through experimental gene therapy. And here we are. So I don't knock anybody. You know, some people want to get totally away from technology, and some people, you know, they want to create alternative living communities where you grow your own food and you have a parallel system to society where you can live free. I got to be honest. I think that's a great idea. I think that way of living is a great idea. But, you know, I tell my daughters when they get a little scared or nervous about what's going on, hey, don't worry, hon. Your dad's Daryl Dixon from The Walking Dead. I'll have my crossbow. We're going to have the funnest camping trip you've ever been on. We spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars a year to go camping, to be off grid. We spend hundreds of dollars to go into the woods and pretend we're homeless for a reason, because we want to return to nature. We need to return to nature, claim our birthright, and claim that which is freedom. We do this when we ground in nature. We lose anxiety when we go to nature. Nature cleanses us. The fresh oxygen of the trees cleanses us. But there's a balance that we can have between the two. It doesn't have to be all one or all the other. We can still have technology. We can still be in nature. We don't have to be in smart cities. We just got to get human beings to understand that objective morality is not bringing harm to anybody. And we've got to get the technocrats who are all excited about this technology, who are being, some of them don't realize that that it's being weaponized. Some of them just aren't in the know. That's how asleep they actually are for how smart they are. When I worked in a hospital setting at a federal medical facility, I swear to God, one of my favorite sayings was, these are the dumbest smart people I've ever been around. So I say we can embrace a little bit of both. We can embrace a little bit of that. Hey, let's form a community. Let's have means of protecting each other. But at the same time, what technology can be used if we use it with higher consciousness? How can we allow it to not be weaponized against us? A gun is just a paperweight. If the intention to use it for something bad is not present, then it is not weaponized. Make no mistake, a gun, like a sword, was made for one reason and one reason only, and that is to unalive stuff. Guns are made to poke holes in things and unalive them. I would like to say I wish they never existed. I would rather, settle things in a manner that's much less violent. In fact, growing up in the 70s and 80s, we got into fights after school. No one got in trouble for those fights. There was a lot less shootings back then, because you weren't in this mindset of we're damned if we're do and we're damned if we're don't, and it doesn't matter who started the fight, you're both in trouble. It's all that matters who starts the fight. You can get into the biggest disagreement with somebody and vehemently disagree with them. If it gets to the point where it's getting that, agitated, you may have to break contact and walk away, but you never have a right to assault somebody. As soon as you do, it's game on. But now they make all these laws and rules, so we're only people with special monkey suits wearing special shiny things on their chests are the only ones who have a monopoly on being able to use force, in which case, coming from them, it's violence. Probably why I wrote my book, Violence and Ego, after I retired in 2016, because it was a catharsis for me. All the aggravating contradictions you find within this. But I can see myself really easily turning this into a 2-hour show, because I do go on these little tangents and I don't mean to do so. All I'm going to say about what's going on in the world right now is don't be toxically positive, because you're going to be shocked when the violence starts. And it's coming. So there is hope. I'm telling you, there's hope. There's beings out there for us, but some humans have to step up. We're going to have to step up. And it's what I'm attempting to do, and it's what I'm going to continue to do. It's until I have to step up in a different way. But I want to finish up what I was talking about last week, with shame. I'm gonna read a few things about it real quick, and I'm going to just pick up where, you got to ask yourself with this question, because people who have this thing where they're shamed, a lot of times their shame is based in something that I consider to be complete egotistical bullshit that no one really gives a, two shits about. It's that person themselves projecting it onto themselves, which is terrible. That's toxic shame. Some people have it and it doesn't need to be there. No one cares. Okay. That's part of it. But you got to ask yourself those questions, what are you ashamed of? Or is there something that's, you're guilty? Do you feel guilty? If you did something wrong, go atone for it. Most certainly don't lie about it, or lie to others about it, or lie about others because of it. That's a big one. Okay. That's staying in your guilt, trauma drama loop. You got to break out of that loop. Okay. And that's something I've worked on too. As a cop, I used to get lied to. Oh, go figure. Cops get lied to sometimes. So I started thinking everyone was lying to me. And then if you turn on the news, everyone pretty much is lying to you. So there's a balance to be found in it, is all I'm saying. I'm not going to go into deathbed, but on your deathbed, you want to be able to look back and sing your death song. You want to know you did what you were supposed to do. You're not going to regret something you did bad. You're going to regret something you didn't do good. Let's be honest. That's where my regrets were when I nearly died. So I'm going to just finish up this little bit of read in this chapter. Okay. So when you can answer the questions with honesty, shame becomes easier to face and move past, regardless of whatever shame is present. This takes surrendering of your ego, controlling your ego. An ego that is more likely than not gone rogue on you and is running the show. Humanity and grace can be found only after we rein in our egos. God, is that true? And we can only face shame with truth when our egos are in check. People go into cognizant dissonance instead. Okay, I wasn't reading that, but that's what I see personally. They never want to admit they were bamboozled, fooled, or God forbid, wrong or incorrect. Honesty can then come from understanding that unhealthy, toxic shame can only occur from trying to present ourselves to others as more than human, or trying to convince ourselves that we're less than human. This is a big one. Self-loathing is a big one. And I've seen this in my personal life with friends. None of this is even allegory to what I've talked about in past shows about myself. I just put the stuff out there about myself because when you're going to do this, you put all your stuff on the street, you put your cards on the table. So if someone's got some crap to say, and they're going to, because I'm getting inboxed by certain people I don't even know who want to wrestle me. I just, okay, dude, you mind-controlled government agent. Instead of even answering them and telling them what I want to say, sometimes I'll speak to their mental capacity on how they're how it's been retarded, and then I'll just block them. Okay, I'm not getting into ego fights with knuckleheads from the government. Okay, so this dynamic can best be seen in the latest 2 Avenger movies with Thor. In his attempt to be more than he was unable to defeat Thanos, not once, but twice. This failure led Thor to unhealthy coping mechanisms and down a self-destructive, loathing path, to a place where he became much less than who he is or what he was meant to be. In a manner of speaking, Thor had to rise from his own darkness. According to the late Wayne Dyer, ego stands for edging God out. I like to just say it stands for edging goodness out, because your ego is going to keep you from becoming good. I know that I, as a martial arts instructor, have tried at times to be more than human, because people put you up on this pedestal. Nobody wants to be put up on a pedestal. They don't. That's a long way to fall. And when you're up on this pedestal, people like to see you fall. This is part of just how a lot of human beings are. And there's people out there who have had great influence on me. Some of them are known real well. Some of them aren't even known. But they've still had great influence on me. And these are the people who have the courage in this movement, like Mount Levolution, like Coriander Lot, like just so many different people that I can start naming off that have the courage to speak out. It doesn't matter if you're known or not known. You're doing it. We're all doing it. We've got different ideas about this. We're going to disagree about things. There might be a couple hundred influences out there, 100 or so influencers, a couple hundred, maybe they're talking about this and probably have a couple 100,000 followers. Wouldn't it be great if we got a couple 100,000 people together who all understood this in one place and not be so spread out all over the place? We then would have a standing, I don't want to say army, I don't want to scare anybody, but we would have a group of people together that can make positive change. Okay. So I got one last thing to read in this book, Rise from Darkness, and this may be the last thing I read out of this book, and you just have to go get the book, okay? This is a musing on ego. Musing on ego. It is hard to imagine that something as fragile as the human ego can be such an extremely powerful force. In my humble opinion, ego is the second leading cause of most conflicts on both a personal and global level, second only to greed. Insecurity is the twin sibling of ego, for they are always with one another. Now remember, I wrote this back in 2016. With 26 years of uniformed services employment of one kind or another and 34 years of competing, training, and teaching and coaching in the martial arts, I have found ego to be the bane of my existence. I have absolutely despised it for its ability to cause people to do things they would otherwise not do if it were absent or more controlled. It for sure keeps people from learning or improving themselves. I now know that what I despise in the ego of others is only what I have despised in myself, or at least in my own ego at times. Despise? Despise is an extraordinarily strong word. As I am growing older and, God willing, a little more introspective and more spiritual, I hope I can learn not to despise anything. Let me take a break from reading that part for a second. Keep in mind, we're always in a state of growth. We're always in a state of learning. I wrote this 8 years ago, and I have no problem saying whatsoever, I despise government. I despise those who would hurt others. I despise those who would enslave humanity. I despise this evil. I actually hate it. And I feel quite nice and righteous and loving about that. Continuing. Make no mistakes about this, though. I do not teach any emotion. I do not attach any emotional or spiritual growth to the martial arts any more than I would to any other endeavor. But I would never judge any martial artist or other person, for that matter, who does. Let me break again. Yeah, I do. What I meant by that is you got to just let them be in their own spiral, or I should say circle, because spiral is actually, there's an out. Eventually, when you're going through a spiral, there will be an exit. Okay? Spiraling out of control. Maybe one day we could all spiral back into control. But the circle of trauma drama is something that affects people's nervous system, and they don't know how to change it. And the only way I can tell you to change it is you have to meditate, get out in nature, change the theta waves in your brain, and start taking different actions that will lead to different results. If you take the same actions and do what you've always done, you're going to get what you've always got. All right. But I am speaking more to a spiritual person in general who believes there is a higher source of creation in the universe, a higher power regardless of how it's labeled or honored. Therein lies my paradox in despising ego, because the very act of despising ego is born from my own often inflated ego. It may be the most egotistical approach to a problem I have ever had. And remember, I wrote this in 2016. As we grow older and wiser, may we all look inward. As we grow older and wiser, may we all look inward and not outward, while attempting to work through our problems and be more thankful for what we do and do not have. There is a grace to be found, remembering we control truly little in what we face with the blessings of this life, other than our own reactions and thoughts. Ultimately, overcoming ego is the key to overcoming shame. And that's going to be, I think, the last thing I'm going to read from Rise from Darkness. I got the main things out into the airwaves, into the collective out there. And there's a lot of different people that are doing radio shows and that are, attempting to be influencers and give truth. I'd love to talk to on anyone's show. I mean, I'll go anywhere and talk to anybody about what I've seen in the government, how I know that they're lying pieces of trash. I've got recordings from doctors and medical staff who are the biggest order followers. They're bigger order followers in my estimation than the people carrying guns. They're right on their level. They're carrying shots, syringes, and protocols instead. I gotta take a sip of my coffee. So I'm going to get into some self-defense things, because what's happening in the world is most certainly going to need, you're going to need a little bit of self-defense. You're going to need some things. We've already got troops that have been found killed in action. over in Russia, over in the Ukraine. All hell's breaking out in the Middle East, which brings me to something. Ask questions, man. Ask questions. And I'm going to start asking more questions myself and not just speaking at the radio mic here, because I've got questions. And, you know, if we start asking questions and we get other people to think about these questions and they ask these questions themselves, maybe they'll start to come to the same conclusions about the reality of what's happening here in our world. Because there is a world war that's already happening. We just won't call it a world war till about 2, 3, 4 years into it, once half the world has been murdered. I mean, honestly, we were already in a world war before Pearl Harbor. It just became official when Pearl Harbor happened. If people can come to understand that we are all being done, that we are all being led through this by a force that does not want to see us be able to return to God. If I was to get back to that, what happens when we bring our experiences and God's experiencing itself through all of us, and we can no longer return to God? Are they trying to weaken God? Are they trying to play God? Are these satanic inverted pieces of trash playing God on this planet? And they know the truth of reality. They don't want the rest of humanity to know the truth of reality. Okay, Elijah, John, Jesus, aka Yahshua, Muhammad. These were all prophets. I believe they were prophets, and I believe they had what we would consider to be divine help, which is just extraterrestrial help. I want you to ask yourself a question. If you were a being that lived for millions and millions of years, if not completely immortal, because your T cells regenerate, and unless otherwise euthanized or killed in some way, you live forever. Couldn't you scribble a bunch of stuff down with half-truths and 3,000 years ago, hand it to a primitive people and say, this is what's going to happen in the future? And then with your technology and your long lives, which would be like me going 2 or 3 days, I could plan 2 or 3 days ahead and I can make those things occur. Can't they do that? That's what's happening now. A lot of Bible thumpers are talking about, the book of Revelations, have spoken of all this and spoken of all that, and they're hoping someone comes back to save them. We have to save ourselves. This is what the Creator wants us to do. The Creator wants us to save ourselves for once. And it seems like over and over again we haven't, because they always inject some type of new savior or religion that's going to have a talk about a savior that's going to come back and be some hero. We have to all be each other's heroes, not our own heroes. We have to be a hero for each other. I want some heroes for me, and I want to be heroes for other. I want to teach people in this audience listening, the younger audience, people like Angus and Sebastian, to teach them how to be heroes. We need to be heroes. We need to be heroes for those younger than us and older than us. And for the ones younger than us, to teach them how to do it. And maybe someday we'll be at a higher level of consciousness where we no longer need a savior. That's just a thought. But I'm going to talk about the 3 stages of predatory tactics, and everything I talk about and read from this it's on a personal level for your personal self-defense, which is very important, and it's going to be the same thing. It's the same thing on a global level, or the microcosm of your life and the macrocosm of the world. So this stuff, everything's fractal. So to one degree or another, this is for the collective, for everybody, and it's for your personal self-defense. There are 3 stages of predatory tactics. There are other common methods an attacker may use to gain your trust. This predator can be anything from a panhandler to a sociopathic killer, and his tactics takes place in 3 stages. Before I say this, there's 2 different types of violence. There's something called social violence, which would be 2 guys in a bar thumping their chest at one another, and their girls are there, and they've insulted each other in front of their girls, so now it's time to go fight. So that's social violence. Then there's asocial violence, which are these, narcissistic, sociopathic psychos who, eat people. And believe me, I had them in my pod when I worked at the prison. There's those kind. And that's what I attribute all politicians to. So stage one is the approach. Okay, think about this. Stage one is the approach. This predator's approaching you. They're setting the stage. Same thing could be said what they do on the news media. They set the stage. Project Mockingbird. So stage one is the approach. At this stage, the predator is closing the distance, maybe with a friendly demeanor. He may say he needs directions or he's lost. It can be difficult to discern harmful intent in such an instance because your basic human instinct is to be helpful. I'm breaking from reading. We are honestly more loving and good than we are bad, which is why I said earlier in the show, we do have to appeal to humanity, to people's goodness, because even the people we consider order followers, they have it, and they will do altruistic things many of the times. The real humans will. Continuing. Our first instinct is to be helpful, as I said. But this is when your gut feelings about danger should be kicking in. One thing to remember at this point is that although many people are naturally very friendly, people who really need directions can sometimes appear to be in a state of slight crisis. So you have to be able to read other things surrounding any given message, any given request. Don't just listen to the words. They're going to be in a state of distress or a state of agitation because they're lost. Maybe they're running late. Because they may be really running late to get someplace. If you don't observe this, it still may not mean much, but it is an indicator that should put you on guard. Also, how many men do you actually know who will admit they are lost? Ladies know this. We don't want to stop to get directions, right? Side note. I don't even know if I want to read the side note. Well, why not? I'll read the side note. It's important. So I was scheduled to run a defensive tactics class at a local police academy. This is like back 10 years ago already, that I had never been to before. I had been told to park across the street from this academy in the parking lot of a local CVS pharmacy, and it was in a very bad neighborhood of town. The academy itself was pretty cool. It had been an old fire department made into a police academy, but it had a fenced-in parking lot with barbed wire. That's a pretty good indication of what kind of neighborhood it is. Must have been a low crime area. Okay, I'm going to just read because I usually have already written what I decided to stop and talk about. As I pulled into the parking lot, I saw a guy who by all appearances was homeless, dressed in layers of dirty clothing, hands in his pockets, and hanging out at the entrance of the CVS. I should also mention that this was January, cold, and I was driving a Camaro at the time. I had a feeling this guy was going to approach my vehicle even before he had seen me. Sure enough, as I was parking, he saw me. I could tell by the way he was watching me park, he was going to approach me. And he did. A couple observations I made as he was walking towards me. He walked with a normal and easy gait. He appeared to be pretty healthy for a homeless guy. Yeah, like a homeless guy with a gym membership. He had his hands in his pockets. Let me just say this right up front right now. I had a paid obligation to be there. I was armed, and even though by this point in my career I was getting pretty bored with this kind of thing, I wasn't going to let that day be the day I get complacent. Plus, if this guy was willing to approach me, I suspected he was more than likely there to panhandle and intimidate the elderly, which I had seen this many times in my past. It's at this point that if you are a self-defense or safety-conscious person who is not a cop, okay, I had to be there. You just simply drive away, right? This is stage one. You've shown good situational awareness in this instance, and based on this guy's approach, and based on everything else I've described about him, you simply drive away, period. Call it into your local police if that's what you want to do, or get your friends or whatever you feel the need to do to keep this guy from predating on people. You have a right to do. So basically how this ended is he came up to my car. I'm not going to read it this part. He came up to my car. As he approached my car, he was looking down the barrel of a tool that I use to protect myself. And he decided it was in his best interest to, leave, which is good. Continuing. So there's no John Wayne story. There's no action story into that. I used a tool to deter what was going to be probably an attempted crime. And keep in mind something. If the guy didn't seem like a predator to me, I would have had no problem giving him a couple bucks for a sandwich or something, or buying him a sandwich myself, whatever. He didn't have that energy to me. So learn how to read people's intent and read their energy. It will save your life. You got this inner child in you, okay? This inner child is going to warn you of danger. Always listen to that inner child. It will not betray you. 95% of the time, that warning danger thing that you got, call it a spider sense if you want, when it starts tingling, there's a reason. Pay attention to it. So stage 2, okay, first there's the approach. They want to close the distance to get close to you. Stage 2, at this stage, the predator is attempting to put you at ease. I don't know if you see this on the news ever, and develop a rapport with you. Yeah, come vote for us. In this stage, it can be someone you have never seen before, or it can be someone you see often in a college class, for example. They may try to demonstrate that you both have something in common. Because they want to gain some type of commonality with you. They want to develop a rapport. Serial killer Ted Bundy was said by women to be both charming and attractive. Remember, this can be that serious, or it could be a panhandler turned mugger who wants to put you at ease, which makes you an easier target. Like any other predator, this guy wants easy prey. He doesn't want to deal with a fight. William Cooper said they're going to win World War III without a shot being fired. They don't want to fight. Not the real good guys. Because if the real good guys all stand up and 7 billion of us say, no, humanity is assembling, we win. They don't want that. So stage 3 of this whole process is the attack. The attack will be fast and hard. And if it's gotten to this stage, your reaction, even if you are trained, will always be slower than the attacker's action, because he knows when he's going to attack you and you don't. This is why you need to be in an appropriate distance that will allow you time to react. And then I go into the next tactical thing, which is the reactionary gap that you need to maintain between you and an attacker. What's going on in the world, they've got a plan with Agenda 2030. Google it. Go to DuckDuckGo and Google it. You'd probably be able to find some things on it. Maybe go to library.gen, type it in, see what you could dig up on it. Agenda 2030, I think it was also known as Agenda 21. Keep in mind, when all this stuff started, October of 2019 was the G20 summit. There were 24 people in this picture at the summit, all world leaders, and there was a few people there that no one knew. That was in October 2019. Then they had the PSYOP in Virginia about guns, where people from all over the country go to Virginia, and then from all over the country return to their home states. And then in January, COVID-19 84 broke out. Think about that for a second. A virus that had a very low death rate, but that they would be able to use to institute safety for us. When I hear the word safety, I actually hear the word slavery. Okay? So anytime I hear safety, that's a bad word to me. I don't want to be safe. I want to be safe from being a slave. That's all I want to be safe from. So real quick on the reactionary gap. The reactionary gap, this is the distance you need to maintain between yourself and another person to be able to effectively react to their action or threat. This is why they keep us vibrating in a state of fear and reaction through all the violence, through all the bad news, through all the weather. They want you vibing low and they want you scared, because then you're easy to control. As soon as you calm down, as soon as you're no longer scared, As soon as you can compose yourself, you can form a response. And they don't want that happening on a large scale, which is why they're doing a slow burn here. If they did something too fast, it would unite this country. If this country is united, the New World government that already actually exists covertly cannot become an overt thing. It just wouldn't happen. So if the person is empty-handed, when we talk about the reactionary gap, if the person is empty-handed, that distance is generally, make sure I didn't, okay, I almost thought I could close this out. If it is generally 6 feet. So if they're empty-handed, you want to keep them at about 6 feet away from you. That gives you time to react to any aggression. Because you're never going to be able to react. I'm fairly trained, and there's people way better trained than me. Bruce Lee, if you're standing within 3 feet of Bruce Lee, you probably could punch him in the face if you're about a green belt. The reactionary gap. You have to have that. You have to be aware of how close somebody is to you if they're dangerous. You have to understand what is intimate space. What is personal space? What is intimate space? I'll break down the different spaces. Like sometimes whenever I do this live, I will have 2 rows of people stand across from each other. And I'll ask row A to walk slowly towards row B. And then when row B, the person in row B when they get uncomfortable, they just put their hand up and tell the person to stop. You'd be surprised how many times it's much closer than 6 feet. And this is important. This is all very important for what I'm going to continue to do into next week's reading, because I will read the rest of this chapter because it is all about self-defense. All right, so note, I'll add that if a person has a bludgeoning weapon, your reactionary gap increases to about 12 feet. If the weapon is a blade, your reactionary gap increases to at least 25 feet. You're not going to always know this. You should never let someone get close to you. Assume that everyone has a knife. Most people have folding pocket knives. They will take your life. Okay. Army Ranger got the first confirmed kill over in Afghanistan back over a decade ago with a spork. A plastic spork. So this is important. Again, this isn't fear. This is just preparing yourself. Be prepared. Also, real quick, I'm going to end the reading, but what I'll say real quick is this: if you're not doing anything to stay fit, start doing something to stay fit. Ride a bike, go for fast walks, climb up a hill, walk up a hill, get your heart rate up. All right, we got music, man. We're ending. Nothing but love. I'll see you guys next week. Same time, same place. Stay safe.